The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey everybody, how you doing? We have a fair amount of people on the webinar already, so I'm starting a minute or two early just so you don't have to sit and look at that boring screen. Just seeing a couple of last minute people joining. Always is that way. First off, can everybody hear me? I know, Kate, you're posting some questions there, so if you don't mind, just let me know if you can see my screen and hear me. That would be great. Cool. All right, great, awesome. Hopefully everybody can see. All right, let's jump in and get started. Some people can just kind of catch up. That's what you get for being late. Well, welcome to this introduction to WKL4. My name is Tim Cusick, and I am the Training Peaks WKL4 product leader. I'm going to take you through a combination of short PowerPoint presentation just to show some thinking and ideas, and then I'm just going to kind of walk you through some WKL4 steps. The objective of today's webinar, tonight's webinar, depending on where you are, is I want to be able to demonstrate to you some of the simple, easy workflow things that will make your life with WKL4 a little bit easier. I do know that, there is a complexity to the software. We're well aware of that. We built something that's highly unique. It's an analytical engine. As you learn more, participate in the Facebook group, and just use it more, you're going to realize all the things that are possible with it. That being said, it comes with a slight educational curve that just takes some time. So my first advice is just give it the time. Excuse me. Spend a little time with it. Just go through the process. Don't try to force it. It'll all kind of come together. You'll learn a little bit as you go, and then you'll be great. For today's presentation, you can ask questions at any time. As a matter of fact, I encourage you to ask questions. On the top right-hand screen, there's probably a little orange arrow like this. This is actually an older version, but still works. And if you open that little control box, somewhere in there you'll see the line questions. If you click it open, you can enter a question here. If you enter that question here, I see it off screen, and I tend to answer the questions as I go. I don't mind asking as we go. As a matter of fact, I prefer it. I'd rather do that than come back like an hour later and be like, oh yeah, remember that question you asked me? And then we always kind of forget. So feel free to ask as you go. If I'm going to answer it, I might ignore it because I know the answer is coming up. So I'm not going to ignore you. I just know the answer is coming. All right. When you sign into WKL4, you get something that looks like this, right? And you have some different views. And by the way, all my images are just samples and examples. Nothing, sometimes like I also use some odd data. We call it sandbox data. So my numbers might not always make sense or something like that. Just don't worry about whether the numbers, worry about the workflow and what we're going to look at here today. So when you open up the WKL4 for the first time, you come to this type of a view, and we call that the athlete level. And the reason we call it the athlete level is over here in the left-hand explorer, all of your athlete lists are located. Now, if you want to look, so at the athlete level, this houses a series of reports and summaries about the athlete's overall performance. But if you want to access what we call the workout level, all you need to do is click directly on the athlete, and you'll get a workout level. This is what the workout level looks like. We know it's the workout level because over here in the left-hand explorer, you now see a list of workouts. If you want to go back to the athlete level, so you could navigate back and forth between these two views, all you need to do is click on that little arrow right there in the top left-hand corner next to the athlete's name, and it'll bring you back to the athlete level. So when you think about WKL4, we wanted to separate the ability to do analytics. Sometimes you're looking at an athlete's season or cycle or year, whatever it is, 5 years. We want to give you the ability to create unique analytics in that time range and or be able to drill down and look at the individual workout. To do that, we've kind of divided it in two levels. Once you get used to it, I don't think about it as two levels anymore. It's just kind of a workflow, but that's the easiest way to explain it. All right, let's talk a little bit about athlete controls. To do that, let's use some definitions. Once we get a common language and you see it being posted in the Facebook group or in the educational webinars and the how-to videos, it'll help. So this up top here, this section up here, this is what we call the hero bar. The hero bar has two sides. Top left, you have information such as the name, the PMC metrics here. So you see CTL, ATL, TSB, and ramp rate. Then you see the power duration metrics. Some of you might notice I have less. I should have updated that screenshot. I haven't done the getting started in a while because there's two recorded versions, but I wanted to make sure I answered questions. So you have more hero metrics. All of the hero metrics all of the PD curve metrics in the hero bar are based off 90 days, so the last 90 days. And then finally, you have your set FTP number. We'll get into the metrics of is there's a difference of set FTP and MFTP down the road. On this other side, we have a series of screen controls. And these three little images here, they allow you to open and close the left panel, the top bottom panels, and the right-hand panel. I'm actually going to demo all this once I jump over to the software. It's just good we get on the same language. So that is your hero bar. Next, we have the left-hand explorer. So here is the left-hand explorer. We aptly named it that after deep thought because it's on the left-hand side. Then I would bet you most people could guess what we call this one. That's right, that is your right-hand explorer. So we have a left and a right-hand explorer. These can be changed in size by grabbing these three dots or just by opening and closing through these activations. You could drag these to make them whatever size you want. As part of the left-hand explorers, we have filter and search boxes. So you have a range filter up top your right-hand explorer, and you have an athlete filter on top your left-hand explorer. So hero bar, left-hand explorer, right-hand explorer, range filter, athlete filter. Okay. Now let's talk about what's going on in the middle here in the world of charts. So what you're seeing on the screen, and not all charts do this, but if you just see one chart, that is just a chart. I guess I could have done a screenshot of that. But when you have this split chart, it is what we call the parent and the child chart. And the parent and the child chart there are one open chart above and a group of open charts below. And the time they are related. I'll demo it, it's easiest to understand, but the time ranges of the charts are related. This bar up here is what we call the top nav bar. We're really good at creative naming, aren't we? So guess what this one is? The bottom nav bar. So when you have this parent-child view going, which we call a chart pack, you have a top nav bar and a bottom nav bar. But realize on the top nav bar, one chart pack has one summary chart and then a bunch of associated charts with it. Now, to open or change different chart packs, I'm just saying it because it's here again, I'll demo this in a minute. We have a chart library available for you, a place you can find a lot more charts. It needs some real cleanup now. We've got let it get a little messy, but there is a chart library which you can access right from that chart library button. Right there. All right. Let's talk about some key functions. So we have the athlete set up on the left-hand side. The athletes are all listed here. See, all athletes are in our filter, so all your athletes are listed here. But you can add and delete more athletes from this plus or minus button right here. So if I wanted to add a new athlete, I would hit the plus button. If I wanted to delete Jan Ryder Runner here, I would hit the minus button. The same rule, the same metaphor, the same way of working goes on time ranges. If you notice down here, we have a plus minus button. If you want to add or delete time ranges, which we're going to explain how time ranges work a little bit, you can just hit the plus or minus button down here. Now moving up top, and this is important, as a new user, you'll make this mistake a couple of times. Suddenly you'll be like, wow, no data is showing. That's because in WKO4, you have a sport type selection process. Often it's the cause. So charts can be devised specifically for biking or run, or you can simply use the sport type picker, in which case you can click on all sports. This little image is all sports. cycling, running, weightlifting. The more different types of activities you have, the more different activities will be available to you. So you might have 10 of these, 5 of these. This athlete just has 4, 3 really, and all being 1. And you could just, like I said, click them and we'll demo it, but it'll go light dark as you select them. Up here, we have this little gear wheel button, which is our launch, sync, and preferences. So for you to click that, you get a little selection wizard. You can choose to manually sync with Training Peaks. You can launch Training Peaks, or you can launch your preferences. A lot of your controls come from the preference UI, which I just opened. If you click preferences, this will open. Here you can change the appearance of your software from dark to light. You can use metric or English. When do you want to start your week? We do share data. It's all anonymous. We do look at charts and who's using what charts so that we can constantly bring you new charts. You can simply opt out if you don't want to share that data. We do not capture any personal data or anything like that. Now, you can set up your sync with Training Peaks. I can't do it because I'm on PowerPoint, but I'll show you. You can set it up manually, meaning you have to push that sync button. You could set it up each time you open WKO4, or you can set it up every hour. I highly recommend you set it up every hour. If it's done every hour, you're pretty much always on real time. You're not looking for files when you go to find things. And then here you have some file data storage location that you might have. And that'll be in your documents as default. Mine's a little odd because I don't actually use my PC. I'm more of a Mac person, and I just use my PC here for webinars and demos. Now, when we have the workout level controls, I'm going to blow through this pretty quickly and save you some time because you'll quickly notice the controls are the same. Here's workouts. If I want to add or delete workouts, I've got some plus minus. I've got a filter. My chart library for workouts is still here. Hero bar, top nav, bottom nav, right-hand explorer. Everything's still there. So you really don't see some big shift in the process. We tried to keep it very similar regardless of what level you're working at. Some athlete level, that should say workout level close. Like I just said, you can delete workouts, add workouts, manual workouts that way, or you could add delete time ranges here. So now what do you do when you get started with WKO4? Well, and this is funny, it's this older image, it still has device agent. Device agent is, I thought I cleaned all that out, but is no longer needed. So basically all you need to do when you go into WKO, I'm going to actually demo this. Depending on how you set it up, if you transferred recently, you basically will just select to sync with Training Peaks. When you sync with Training Peaks, it will sync your athlete data. And then things will just populate. It's pretty much that simple. So I'm going to show you a trick or two when we get into the software, so sit tight on that. You can set that, like I said, you're syncing. I would recommend you sync it to every hour. This is a screenshot of what I'm going to demo for coaches. So if you're an individual, it's just going to use you and give you that option and you can sync it. And I'm going to show you how you can change your sync settings in the demo. But if you're a coach and you want to coach all, or you want to sync all of your athletes, just enter your coaching name and password and you'll get your athlete list. And you can just select which ones or sync them all. So I'm sorry, I'm just reading a couple of different questions. The athlete list will be there for you to download. When you do your initial sync, it can take a while. So the reality is it's something that, you know, if you think about it, most athletes have like 5 to 10 years worth of data. And if it's just one, it'll take, I don't know, 15, depends on your internet connection. But if you're doing a bunch of athletes, that can take a while. So just be prepared. The first download of getting all the athlete data in is important. Another way to get data in, so we have the sync individual, we have the sync coaches. Another way to get athlete data in is you can just simply plug in your Garmin. WKO4 will auto detect that a device has been plugged in. this little user wizard UI will pop up. You associate that device with an athlete. Now, if you always choose this athlete, like I say, it's your Garmin and you're the only one that uses it, always select that, right? Always choose this. You won't even see the UI. Just whenever you plug in your Garmin, it'll be magic. Of course, you can sync your Garmin through Training Peaks using Garmin Connect, so you get plenty of options. And in today's world of Bluetooth and Wi-Fi connection, probably the sync way is better and leaving the sync every 1 hour. But if you like to plug in, go for it. You can also drag and drop unique files. So you can drag and drop a .fit, a PWX, a .srm, a .wko, or which is older WKO files, or a .tcx. We'll read them all. When you drop them, it'll ask you what you want to do with those files and just assign them to the athlete you want to drag them in. So it's totally capable of dragging them into that process. I'll come back to that actually in a second. If you want to open new charts, the reality is you can just select this chart picker and you'll get a chart library UI that will open. You have two areas of your chart library, and we're doing a lot of work on making this easier because it got crowded fast. We knew we would. When we did something that was like an analytical engine, we left it a little more fluid, a little more user-based. And in some ways that's been great. In other ways it's made a lot of stuff. So you just got to be a little bit careful, and we'll show you how to navigate. So basically you can open your chart library, select if you want to use your charts, my charts, which is your saved charts, which I'll show you how to do, or use the chart library, which is kind of housed at Training Peaks. You can search any of this. It's a very good search just by searching the name or the topic that you look for, and you'll get a selection of options in search. So it's a pretty simple process there. If you want to build a new chart, and again, I'll show very basics on building a new chart. We have great ones for building advanced charts, but you can click that, you can create a new chart, and then just pick a chart type that you want to build. I'm going to demo it. When you save charts, and again, I'm going to demo this, you can, oh, my little arrow's off. It would actually come right from here, but you can configure, export, make a copy, or save chart to my chart. So I just showed you where my charts are. Once you save it to your charts, if you notice right now, there's a little dot there. That little dot will go away and let you know it's saved, just like opening your email. We have some unique chart configuration functions. So you can look at different information. I'm actually just I'll jump into this briefly so it's better to demo. We have lots of resources that you can use. There's Training Peaks Education Center, which I'm going to link to you guys here in a minute. Online certification. There is a power certification and a WKO4 certification on the Training Peaks University online. We do have a TPU. We do one TPU a year. There's not one currently scheduled, but it'll come out when it does. And there's the support team, and we have an expression guide. I will show you how to do all of that in a second. And if you do have a problem, people post problems in Facebook. I try to answer what I can, but it's impossible to help people in the Facebook group with a lot of problems because the reality is, you know, I need the files, I need the real information, and it just creates a lot of noise. So try to just post or put a ticket in if you're having a problem. Post in the Facebook first. I don't mind that. A lot of times I'll say put in a ticket because a lot of times there's, you know, because of the complexity of the software, there can be some user errors and you'll get that help quickly. If you need to submit, just click on that submit ticket, select WKO, and put in whatever you need help with. All right, let's get to the live stuff and do a little demo. One question I had is about speeding WKO4 up. WKO4 is not a reporting system. It's not. And a lot of times people start using it and they're like, wow, it's slow. Because as you figure out, two reasons drive that. One, let it cache all the data first. So because in today's hyper world, we just like to click buttons, if you will, and I'll show you a trick to doing this, just when you have an athlete and you have all your data open and stuff like that, and you have a big dashboard or something, just select all workouts and let it cache everything once. And caching means it's kind of building the reports and it's remembering them. And that will speed up the performance. Time and time again, people will never let it complete that caching because they don't want to wait. But then, you know, uh, each time you do it, each time you click back to those reports or something like that, it's going to try to cache again and it'll slow you down. So just let it fully cache. There are some reports that are using amazing amounts of data. In today's world, we have this expectation like, wow, this analytic needs to be like this. But if you have 10 years of power data or 5 years of power data and you're doing a report that's looking at each individual second and trying to find the top this or the trend of that can take a while. It just is what it is. If you want more, kind of the summary and surface data, use Training Peaks. That's why they were designed to work together very clean and neat. You get a lot of summary and descriptive data in Training Peaks. You get much deeper analytics and the things that you can do in WKL4. That being said, let it finish caching your reports, and you usually take a significant upgrade in speed. It's got to compile all that downloaded data at some point. All right, so here's my WKL4. Let's jump into. I'm going to do a little walkthrough and show you guys little tricks and some things that can get you started. The reality is, I'm really just going to show you that workflow and let you discover. Then there's some upcoming webinars that were scheduled, I think this morning, that'll show you how to begin to really utilize the new science, the models, the building custom charts and stuff like that more in depth. So again, reminder, none of this data is real. I don't even know if I have thresholds set or anything in this data. I'm just using it as a quick demo for everybody. So here we have our hero bar. So when I'm going over the hero bar, right, you might notice, I know the screen isn't the best, some things light up. Some things light up. Oh, well, when something lights up, that means you can click on it. So if you've been a user of Power and you know the Performance Manager system, we have default ranges for performance management. So let's say you wanted to enter a default or look, always just explore, just click on, oh, hey, that lighted up. And I get a wizard that says ATL preferences. I clicked on ATL if you didn't see it. I can drag that wizard around. I can put it up here by ATL. I can use the ATL. I can change my ATL constant here. We have 7 days as the default for ATL. But you also have the ability to alert. So I can alert and warn. So let's say ATL is changing or some numbers changing and you want to use color coding to give you a quick look at what's happening with the athlete. Let's say if I wanted to alert if it's less than 80 or more than 100. Hold on one second. So if it's less than 80 and more than 100. So alert or setting an alert turns it red. Do you see the ATL went red? But I'm like, I don't really care if it's over 80. I'm a little more concerned if it's over, I'm sorry, if it's less than, I said over, if it's less than 60. But I do want to get a warning if it's less than 85. So between 85 and 60, it's going to be yellow. This allows a red-yellow system. You can set this up for metrics to kind of alert you. So when you're quickly flipping through athletes, there's a yellow ATL, some type of an alert. If it's red, maybe it's it's a warning, or this is a warning or an alert. Call it what you want, but it'll give you a little highlight. Each one of these will launch a UI. Anything that lights up, click on it. You'll learn a lot more about the system. You can close and open things here. I could close that left-hand explorer and open that left-hand explorer. Same function. And again, as I showed you up here in the hero bar, you have ability to launch different things. You can launch your preference UI or whatever you want. You cannot change or edit the hero metrics that are here. They're based on a rolling 90 days in your data. They're up there. We've had a lot of requests to make it on different, to give a little more flexibility, which we will do in a future build. But right now, to be able to make sure we're protecting the science of what we're doing, we have an excellent model in the power duration model. The power duration model does an excellent job of representing physiology, the underlying physiological factors. So we don't want that, or have not at this point wanted that changed. We see, some flexibility now, so we'll be probably editing that. And set FTP you can't change here. You'll change from somewhere else, as I will show you. So there's your hero bar and, the different things that you can do with it. You'll notice here that this athlete, Steve Ryder, is dark here. So that is my selected athlete. The name matches up there. And if I selected another athlete, if I selected Beth Ryder, Beth Ryder's name goes up there. So you can see the change in selections. So reality is the different types of data, and the different things that you can do will all flow from the ability to select an athlete and then look at their unique setup. Here's my navigation bar. I have a couple of different charts open, but when you first open, here's a trick, right? I would always go to the athlete details. As a matter of fact, it's normally over here on the left when you first install. And if you'll see here, you can see the client information, you can see the download type, and you can see what type of training levels you're looking at here. But you also have a series of metrics that you can set. So let's say I wanted to set a threshold for this athlete, for Steve Ryder. I would click that down arrow, and I could go in, and I don't have it. Just by hitting plus, though, I could enter, and I wanted to change that to, I don't know, 300 watts. Now I have a new number entered. I'm good. And it will adjust anything that needed to be adjusted within the reporting system. You notice it'll actually, you see here, it's starting to build a line, so you can see it over time. I didn't go back and rebuild anything. Again, as you can see, I haven't been key. This is just an athlete not set. But as you're going forward with an athlete and you're setting, or you're working with them setting thresholds, you can see when it goes up and down when your set threshold changes. Same for max heart rate, same for other things. Now, over here with my selected athletes, you notice all athletes is selected. So if I pull this down, I actually have some names under here. And those are groupings or tag names. And this is a significant change in how you can manage your athletes. So the question, does WK4 does not import thresholds from Training Peaks? It does not. Training Peaks, if you've noticed, one of the things, we wish we would have changed 5 years ago, we just didn't see it coming, in Training Peaks side, not WKO, and WKO too, but is your threshold isn't stored anywhere. It's really hard to go back and change your go back and try to change your threshold in Training Peaks. It's just one of those things. There is a solution coming to that down the road. We're doing a lot of work on the API and the database and Training Peaks, which will make it easier. So yeah, that's something down the road, but until it's actually housed on the server, we can't grab it. How do you change weight from kilograms to pounds? Just, you can set in your preferences. You could set whether you want it to be English or metric. Some, though, reports force English or metric. You have the ability to do that, but that's where you would set it. Okay, just going back to this example of the pull down. So you'll see here that Steve Ryder has a client tag. So in tags, I've named him client. So if I'm doing the pull down and I look at clients, oh, now I only have that athlete. So by tagging an athlete, which all you need to do is type something like, oh, that's a pro. And, oh, wait, here's a funny one. Let's say Wednesday. I'm going to use an abbreviation for Wednesday, right? So and I've seen more and more coaches doing it. So the day they end up meeting with the athlete, like if they meet every Wednesday or something like that, they might group their Wednesday athletes. So now this athlete has 3 tags. You notice it added more options to the filter now. So if I wanted to just look at my pro athletes or my Wednesday athletes, of course I only have 1 in each group because I've only done 1. But the reality is, if you think about it, like I group in my actual WKO old athletes, current athletes, and I group mountain bikers and road racers and time trialists and stuff like that. So I tend to group by specific, their specificity, their particular event, at least their main events. That's the way my mind works. So I use whether I want my old clients. I never like to delete anyone, but I don't want a whole busy list of this, right? So I basically put current and then sport type or mine. You could set up multiples. It saves you a lot of time, and for particularly those of you that are managing a lot of athletes. Also note, so if I go back to all athletes, that anything, remember, that's here, so if I click, if I'm going to delete all athletes and I type, it's also all the filters are search filters. So let's say you do have those 60 athletes and you just wanted to find Jane, just type Jane, and it will find all your Janes. So, that's definitely something that's going to take forever. You're seeing compiling. I just pulled this data down and notice it's on all workouts because that is what I will do first just to make sure everything compiles. So the reality is every filter is searchable. The same reality goes on over here in the right-hand filter. So you have user ranges and all ranges, user ranges and all ranges. And you could look at user ranges, which I'm going to demo this. But you can also search it if you wanted to find, like you build a bunch of, you can see here I have some custom ones. I'm going to show you why in a moment. You could just type in the name and search it. And above this, we have our sport types. So you can see this athlete has bike, run, actually bike, walk, strength, rest, and other. So if I took the cycling off, right, it's going to recalculate that PMC. And you notice what happens is nada. So this athlete, all of their PMC data is coming from cycling. They might have some other things in there, but there's no TSS assigned. So if I clicked back on that, it's going to rebuild the chart. It's going to put that back together and give you the PMC based off that data. There you go. So you can pick and choose different sport types. As I said, though, here, let's say you wanted to see this a little bigger. You could always resize your charts. That's perfectly fine, whatever. I've got a little open just for demo. I close the left-hand Explorer all the time, but some people like it open. Whatever works for you. So a final thing with the athlete, you see a repeat of the KP, what we call the key performance information. So here you have the PMC metrics, and then we have peak performance of 5 seconds, 1 minute, 5 minute, 20, 60 minute, 60 minute NP. That's again based on the last 90 days. That gives you quick insight. Like I can look at all of these athletes here and quickly see what some of their peaks were. We also have their phenotype. I will go over phenotype in the next kind of getting started webinar where we look at the actual power hydration curve and the resulting metrics. But phenotype is a type of rider. It's just a way of grouping like athletes who tend to put out power in the same format. So we have different, KPI information there that you can utilize, and it allows you to quickly look through athletes and see if there's anything, jumps out or type of information you need. You'll see the same when we dig into the workout level. So now we have, let's talk about this chart area. So right now I have, I'm going to just pick it for last week. Cycling PMC was done. So now let's take a look at the cycling dashboard. The reality is a dashboard, right? So the single chart, here we have a dashboard, which is a group of single charts. And if you look at these, I took it down, like if I was to select this week and next, you notice a certain amount of the data goes blank. The reality is you notice there's no workouts here. So some things have history and age to them, but anything that's based off current data goes blank because there's no data there for it to analyze. Now, a dashboard is a combination of a bunch of reports, which can, you have a tremendous amount of data in a dashboard. So as you then, I want to see last week, or let's just go to last 30 days. So you'll notice some will be faster, some will be slower. So the more data in there, it's just going to take a little time to calculate. I'm scrolling down through the dashboard, and I'm looking at all types of different information here, different charts. Each one of these is its own unique chart. Some are as simple as distribution of training load, but some are as complex of trying to figure out, time at VO2 max versus MFTP. So there's a lot of stuff happening in here. And it just, if you want that level of data, if I want to know on 714 where my modeled threshold in comparison to my modeled VO2 max was, that's how you could see it. Now in a dashboard, we also remember we said we would have packs. So we have packs and dashboards. So here's a pack. So when we have a pack, now we're back to this top bottom. The dashboard, we were back to we were seeing and viewing tiles. So the reality is, if you notice what I'm doing on the screen, I know this never shows up great. Notice that what I'm changing in the top is being followed in the bottom. So the parent chart, this power duration chart, has 4 children. A PD curve with elevation, or I'm sorry, with error correction, so you can see like how accurate, how off it is. So, you know, here you see the errors of the curve, so you get a little understanding of what, like this has got a little bit of weird data. You can see it in here. So when you choose, though, if you notice, when they have the same axis, I'm able to run them, you know, top, bottom. So, for example, here I can see the MMP in power and PD curve in power, and here I can see it in watts per kilogram. So it gives you some options. Some things work better in packs. I tend to find that at the athlete level, dashboards do a little bit better, and at the workout level, packs do a little bit better, but it really is something that works for you. So now when I'm in a pack, I'm just going to grab a distribution chart. So let's say I see this time in classic zones. You notice it lights up when I hover over it. So I click on it and it shows up here, and now I get the full screen view of it. And if I'm like, no, you know, so that's not the one I wanted, I can just close that chart and it's gone. So I can go back to my cycling summary and say, what I really wanted was, no, that was really what I wanted. Actually, it's going to be a good example for what's coming up, so I'm going to take it. So now I have a time in zones and my nav bar gets busier. I will tell you when you're done with charts, close them, or you'll end up with a lot of clutter. So now, over here in the right-hand Explorer, right, I built some time ranges. And time ranges can do all kinds of unique things, right? So let's say I go back to cycling here for a second. Let me open one other chart. I think it's in this cycling example. So here's just a simple diary, right? We always think of data as information. And if you look at that diary, it's like, oh, okay, there's information, lots of notes. And I know the typing's small. I'm going to show you in a minute. That's showing me data for the last 30 days. But if I just wanted to see last week, that's showing me last week. But what if I just wanted to make a custom time range? So I can hit plus, right? And I get a UI with a time range. And I'm going to call this time range example. And in my example, I want to get data from, you can always put in dates, right? So I'm not going to show you that. I'll show you another trick. What if I wanted the rolling last 7 days? What if I wanted the rolling last 10 days? So in WKL4, everything's driven by an expression. And you'll learn expressions as you go if you want. A lot of people just don't, you know, use other people's charts. I'm going to show you, but you can do it. So if you did today minus 10 days to today, that's going, so let's call that example 10 day. Now I have a running 10 day. Look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's a missing day. No, 1, 2, 3, whatever. You get the point. So you can set up custom time ranges. And once a time range is selected, as I've been showing, that's what you're seeing. So now I can go back and there's my distribution for the last 10 days. Now, custom time ranges play, if you wanted to just look at your custom time ranges, just here, I have all ranges, which are your defaults and whatever you create. Or if I just want to see ones I've set up, I can select user ranges. Now you'll notice, and I do this with all my athletes, that I set up my seasons to be a base, build, race, and then the full season. So for each season, I have 4 time ranges. a base period, a build period, a race period, and then the full season. And I do that for multiple years, typically 3 years back when I first start working with somebody. And the reason I do that is it gives me some good comparison. So if I'm looking at now my example 10 days, I can see that this is distribution in classic Kagan levels. Well, what did that look like in the 2017 base period? That doesn't look very basey, does it? Athletes doing a lot of group riding, I tell you right now. So that's the 2017 base period. And then they went on to build period. Again, I don't know who this athlete is, so I shouldn't say that, but I don't. Oh, wow, there's a pretty good difference between the base and the build period, right? What about when they raced? Oh, wow, that's totally weird. And you can see here I have time ranges. I just kind of pick in this example, I just used, I think, November to March, and then March to May, and then May to October. So the reality is, right, that gives you some insight. But if you hold your control button down on your PC or your command button down on Mac, you could actually overlay these. So if I wanted to see the 2017 build overlaid by the 2017 base, it gives me two. See them selected here? Now look up here. I know this is small yet. Maybe I should have fixed that first. But if I hover over the index, this says 2017 build in case you can't read that, and this says 2017 base. I can look at them individually, or I can let them be together. So I can see here, wow, I know this color is a little close probably for your screen. During the base, this person had a lot more endurance, so I guess that's what they were supposed to do, but they also had a lot more anaerobic capacity. So you could easily compare. And one of the interesting things that you can do there, and again, I'm going to hold, is I could look at 2017 base versus 2016 base and look at change by time ranges. So this athlete in 2017 dropped, this was a bunch of junk miles in green here, did more endurance, cut that down, and they still just had a lot of that. It's classic, a lot of group riding. And if you wanted to compare that, if you had back years, you can do as many as you want. Now just be careful. You notice they're all lining up here. They might not be in color order, but because I don't have any specific time ranges besides that, but you can see them all there. So the reality is it gives you we call that the compare mode. The compare mode gives you excellent insight into being able to compare data. Now let's say, oh, well, I'm interested in that number. That was pretty good. But what I really would find interesting is I don't like bars, chart bars. I want the classic zones. So there's the classic zones. And if I control 2016 base, there they are as a percentage. So I can see, wow, I want a more precise view here. I could really see the percentage change. This athlete in their 2017 base period spent 16% of their time in anaerobic capacity zone. That's some good intensity. So reality is, there's been change. If I wanted to continue to choose more, I could do that and compare years, seasons, base periods, build periods, whatever data you want. So the ability to set up custom time ranges, actually, if you think about it, and I always set them up the way the athlete trains. For those who watch or have seen my other webinars, I don't believe in classic periodization. I don't even really believe in periodization the way we tend to talk about it. But the reality is breaking things down into areas where you have a defined purpose, where you're trying to accomplish something, really helps because you can compare that in a lot of ways. So doing different time ranges really can help. If you wanted, let's say you've had like 10 years of an athlete and you wanted to find all the base periods, the reason you should think about your languaging up front is if I wanted to search base, right, it's going to bring up my base periods only. So let's say you had 5 or 6 years of that. I don't have to scroll through a bunch. I can just search it, select it, bam, I'm done. Information's right there. And then you could always go back to your all ranges, whatever you want. I'll put my sample 10 days back since I went through and built that for everybody. Okay, so that gives us a little bit of understanding of how the nav bar and the different functions work together. Let me just expand that out. So that gives you a little difference and a little understanding of how that nav bar works together. I would take the time, and it is time what it is, to think of a system of time ranging. One of the most powerful things that WKO4 is going to give you is the ability to look at data when the athlete was doing something, racing something, like with a lot of my athletes, if you think about something, I always run 12 weeks to nationals, 12 weeks to worlds, right? I'm highly interested in the data that's happening the 12 weeks leading in. So when you go multiple years, you can kind of compare how you built up to that, how you prepared, what were the results. If you start thinking about that data will work on anything, mean maximal power, power duration curves, all kinds of stuff. It gets pretty powerful. The next series, the part 1 and part 2 webinar series that we're going to do, we're going to get into the power duration and metrics and and you'll see a lot of compare mode be part of the function. Okay, so now you notice I've got different charts. I've got my example 10 days going. We've kind of gone through some very simple kind of examples, the way it works. Let's talk about the idea of doing and building charts. Now, if you were watching that chart, it took a couple of seconds to load. The screen slows it down too. But when you have your chart set up, there's a couple of things you can do, right? So I'm going to click that. You see that little down arrow? I'm going to click that. I'm just going to bring a configuration box. Now in a configuration box, you can drag it and move it. I'm going to try to put it up there so you can see what we can do. Everything we're looking at right now, see how here, okay, I'm going to change this first. You see this highlight here for the last 10 days? And you can see it says example 10 days. I just don't have my full screen open. And then you can set all of your charts, both the data series that's in the chart and the range, to zoom or highlight. I'll explain overlap and separate a little bit. Right now it's set to highlight. What highlight means it's showing all of the historical data. That's why it took that 5 seconds, 4 seconds to build, because it went back 5-6 years and built that PMC. It was kind of cached, but it still built it because I'm changing data. If I just wanted to look at the current 10 days, I could set a chart to zoom, in which case what it will start doing is it's just going to look at the current 10 days of what you're doing. Now, that obviously doesn't look too great as a PMC, but I'm going to leave it there for a second while I show you a couple of other tricks just to make the other tricks kind of easier. So if you want to see all of the data and the data time range you've selected, that's highlight. If you only want to see the data you selected, that's zoom. Again, I'll go over overlap and separate in a moment. So now, for your own search reasons, you can tag your own charts, but you can have anything be a chart or a report. So if you're someone who likes to read numbers, if you're someone who is just a report guy, and oddly enough, for what I do, I definitely like to look at reports. You could look at reports. So here's the same data. There's your CTL, your planned CTL if you had some coming up, your ATL, your actual ATL, everything's in there. Now, one of the problems everybody I'm sure is looking at is, well, I can't really see that. So you see this font size? You can go to default. I made it small just to make the demo. Or you can go to bigger, or you can go to, as Kevin calls it, huge. That probably really depends on your screen size and what you're doing, and what fits for you. But you can change the data. I'm getting pretty old, so improving data size matters to me. But the reality is, it's something that you might see here on my screen. It's actually outsizing my screen. So you have the ability to kind of select and do what you want to do with those fonts. You'll notice it does it also does everything that's in the chart titles and stuff like that. So it will check that. So let me put that back to chart for a second. So the other thing that we have when it comes to your charts, and this really probably is more applicable at the workout level, is a smoothing bar. So you can smooth charts and it will literally smooth the chart. A lot of times though, if you have a chart smooth and you're like, wow, I'm looking for my peak power, my max 1 second, you're not going to see it when you smooth charts. So just be careful if you smooth charts. You tend to lose some data in there. Now, let's say I wanted to look hypothetically at, and I'm holding control down. I'm going to go ahead and close this configuration for a moment. And I'm going to look at the last 10 days versus the last 30 days. Let that compile. I should have compiled all this data for you guys in advance. Would have been nicer of me. So the reality, what it's going to do is it's going to overlap these charts so that now I can look at the charts in a different way. So if you remember the configuration, I can, a data series is the data in the chart, right? And the range is the time range I'm looking for. So in the data series, you could either, it's always going to be zoomed in the data series. You could overlap it or you could separate it. And separate it's going to give it to you in a lanes view, which means it'll give you each piece of data in its own individual lane, which again, this is going to come down to how you want to see your data and what you find more comfortable interacting with. I don't use lanes data much. I kind of like, if I'm going to use the images, I want to use a big busy image, but this allows you, I'm going to go ahead and close that just so you can see it, to see like, and you can see here it's showing both the last 30 data up here, and you can see the cursor is moving with itself. It's keeping track through all the different lanes. But man, that's to me just too busy. So I am going to put it back to overlap. Now you can do the same with time ranges. You could zoom and separate your time range. So, and the ability to zoom and separate a time range simply does sort of the same thing, except it groups your time ranges into that data group. So now we're going to see two individual, we're going to see a 10-day PMC and a 30-day PMC. So there you see each PMC. So here's my 10-day and here's my 30-day. And you can see obviously the 10 days a little shorter because it's 10 days. So the reality is it really becomes what you want to see in your data. Now, once you go away from compare mode, it's something that, you're only going to see the individual. So the zoom and separate doesn't matter. It'll always look the same when you have single data. So that's an excellent way to use and compare data. Now, if I was to click on a different athlete, right, and then come back to Steve Ryder, you'll notice that cycling PMC is top left, and it always defaults to the top left. Always defaults to the top left. It will remember the time range, as you noticed, but it's always going to default to that top left report. So whatever report I find that, like let's say for me, my cycling dashboard really is the one that I want. And you notice, by the way, I showed you this earlier, it has a dot now because I changed it from highlight to overlap. So if I close it, it's going to ask me, right? So I'm going to close that chart. It's going to ask me if I want to keep those changes. No, I liked it the way I originally had it in cycling, so I'm going to discard it. Don't worry about it. You didn't discard your chart. It's still in there in your cycling pack. It's still, going to be available to you for use and stuff like that. So it'll be around. When you look at your athlete details, so one of the things that it's really important that you do in here too is that you always have your weight and height set correctly. I forgot to say it earlier, and I should have, because some of the reports are dependent, particularly when somebody asked me about metric versus English. So all the reports are dependent. So make sure in your athlete chart that you have that set up. So somebody sent me a private question about that. That's why I answered it. You can just put your questions in the group. Just send them to everyone so that everybody can see them. Okay. Now let's talk about opening charts. So one of the things that happens with WKO, you start getting into the expression stuff, and I'm going to show a little bit of that here in a minute, but is to open charts, shop first. Go shopping for charts. So you could open your chart library, right? And here's my charts. Of course, mine's going to be full of all kind of whack. This is my sandbox, so I test everything in here, and I'm always playing with something. But the chart library are our official charts. We're going through a nice cleanup of this. About another 30 days, we'll have it better organized. But the reality is there's so much stuff. People have done so many cool things in here. It's, amazing. So if you wanted to like search for something, I'm trying to think of, it's funny. Now, what should I search for? So let's say you wanted to learn about fatigue resistance, right? So I could start spelling fatigue, and you notice it keeps up with me in the search. So if I wanted to say, wow, are there some charts about how an athlete deals with fatigue resistance? I quickly find out. I don't even need to go type anymore, do I? There's a whole dashboard, and then there's a bunch of individual charts. So when you see the individual square, these are individual charts. When you see the multi-layer, that's a pack or a dashboard. So let's pick one. So I'm just going to pick a report. It asked me to overwrite because I already have it open somewhere. Don't worry about that. Just click right through. So now it's going to compile. Again, I could have compiled this for you. This is a pretty good chart. Oh man, that font is small, so I might go in and make it bigger. So that's how you can customize your charts very quickly. So this is one looking at an athlete after 3,000 kilojoules. Oh, that's hilarious. And it would compare the data. The problem is this athlete doesn't have any workouts over 3,000 kilojoules. So an important note, when the data isn't available, WKFO doesn't produce the data. So that's a fatigue resistance over, here's a fatigue resistance for Cat 3.5. Let's see if that'll work. I think this one's 1,500 kilojoules, maybe 1,000. So you think about what's happening here. You're looking at all the data for that time period, and it's looking at, no, this athlete doesn't even have a 2,000 kilojoules, so let's maybe look at 90 days. But getting the point is it's more about the shopping and utilizing the chart library. Don't start building your own chart until you've looked through the chart library. You will find an amazing amount of things that you can kind of manipulate or change a little or do something with that give you a much cleaner, easier starting point. So the reality is most of the stuff at this point, pretty much everything's been done to some degree. Now, a lot of people edit and have nuance, so don't get me wrong, but the reality is pretty much everything has been done. So I think that, one of the things that you can do is shop, pick it up. Of course, I took something that's very complex. One other bit of advice that's compiling when you shop is, right, think about the metric that you're using. Yeah, no, sorry, I don't have a full set going here. There's no data to calculate the information on. So I should have used some real athletes. You get the idea. I don't want to keep you any later. So open your chart library and search and shop for charts first. It'll give you a much bigger, easier head start. If you find a chart that you like or that you want to use information, you can just edit it. Now, what if you do want to create a new chart? So you can create a new chart, and I'm going to create a new custom chart. And that gives me a blank chart. You can see it here as new chart. And I could name it, my chart. I'm going to start it out as a report just to make it a little easier. I'm going to leave them in zoom overlap. I'm going to make the text bigger because I'm a little blind, right? Now, if I wanted to add some data to my chart, again, we go back to this plus minus. Sorry, there's lots of questions rolling in two different ways. So I add a data series. Let's just say I wanted to add some expression. Now, if you notice here, look what happens, enough to get you started. That lights up, so we click on it. And look, there's some expressions, some things already built in there. So what if I wanted to know my mean max 1 hour? Well, I can highlight expression, look for a mean maximum, 1 hour power. And there's what the expression looks like. And there, for each of the last 10 days where I've ridden my bike more than an hour, I'm getting a mean max power 1 minute. And I'm sorry, 1 hour. And basically the expression here, I'm not going to get too into expressions, but is mean max. I'll do one in a moment. Well, now that I look at it, the report's kind of dull. I want to actually make that a chart. Well, now I have a chart that has a squiggly line. Looks like this athlete has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 workouts in this 10-day period. So now I'm getting that. But now that I've set it to a chart and I'm clicking on the data series, which I'm going to call MMP60, so I'm going to name it. You know what? I want that to be bars. Now maybe an area. At the end of the day, I like the line. Maybe a square line. Oh, there it goes. I like that. And I want to make it dashed. And I want to make it orange. So you have the ability to customize. Oops, I didn't check color. You have the ability to customize any of the data that you have in there. And down here, you can name your labels, round it, put a certain number. Now, let's say I also wanted to look at my mean max power 5 minutes. So whenever you build an expression, because we don't have a pre-built one for 5 minutes, right? So always think from the inside out. Again, we'll have more data on this in a little bit. In the upcoming webinars, we'll show you more about building charts deeper. I could absolutely look up. So here's an example, right? I'm about to build a chart with mean max power. So if I went to a chart, sorry, the GoToWebinar control keeps syncing to the back. If I launched my chart library and I typed mean max, let me just type mean. Look, there's a whole dashboard in my chart library. Look at all these mean max options. So always shop first before you create something. But if I'm like, it's just not what I wanted, I can take that data series, always start from the inside out and think like algebra. So the data I'm looking for is power. The time range I'm looking for is 5 minutes or 300 seconds. You could type it 5:00, whatever you like. I just think in seconds. Well, I'm going to put parentheses around that because that's what I want. And then I'm going to, well, what did I want to do with that power? Oh, I wanted a mean max power, 300. Okay, cool. So I'll leave that one in squiggly lines, and I'm going to dot it that color. Or actually, maybe what I'm going to do is I'm going to make that bars. So now I have that in the front, MMP5. Okay. Now, what if, though, I really just wanted to look at the average of the MMP5. So I'm going to right-click that. I'm going to copy it. So copy is your friend, right? I'm just going to start a new data series, and I'm going to paste it. And this one I want average MMP5 min for the time range that's selected. So go back to the same theory. I wanted power for 5 minutes. I wanted the mean max power for 5 minutes, but now I want to apply another factor to it. So I'm going to put that in a new set of parentheses. And I'm just going to type AVG. Now that gives me a straight line, right? Because that should be, it's an output. It's a single number, average power. But I want to see what that is. I can see it's just under 250. So I could annotate, add some annotation. Let's say I choose above right. Now it puts that there. So you have ways of building out all of this custom data. I don't want to get any deeper into it. We have some advanced ones. Watch the webinar series and stuff like that. It will really help you. One of the questions I got, I'll tackle it right now, is do we do pedaling dynamics with PowerTap pedal? PowerTap doesn't actually record the data, but I am working with them right now. It's not in their fit file. They are working on having that done, and my guess is they'll have it done pretty soon. So they don't actually export that data anywhere. You can only see it in their software, but they are working hard on it, and I would expect it to be in the fit files probably, I don't know, 60 days. I shouldn't talk for them, but soon. I know they're moving pretty quickly. All right, so showed you how to shop, showed you how to build some charts. I've showed you how to use the library. Now, if I wanted to save this chart, I could save chart to my charts. I'll save it. Notice the dot goes away. I didn't name it. Typically, you should name it and put some tags in there so you can search it, but it saved it. The dot is gone. So one other just quick function, and then I'm going to wrap it up and take any final questions. Let's say you're looking at this chart, you wanted to find help because you don't know what power duration is. Click little down arrow. Notice this last one is learn more about this chart. If you click that, it'll launch help articles with videos explaining how to use them. Sometimes they're write-ups, sometimes they're ebooks. Andy and I did a bunch of ebooks and stuff like that, but it'll show you and bring you to related help on those charts and what they are. The other resource for you is if you go to any Training Peaks page, just select the WKO page. If you scroll down to the bottom is the link to our education center. We have a tremendous amount of resources. We have videos for people that are new. There's tutorial. There's how-to videos. The how-to videos are short, little 3 to 5 minute, like how do I enter an expression? How do I build a chart? How do I delete an athlete? All of those deals. Webinars and seminars. There are a series of ebooks to help you learn. The ebooks are like more of an explanation. So about like our pedaling metrics and different things, power duration, what's time to exhaustion, different pieces and parts, running with power, a primer threshold. Somebody asked me earlier about FTP and setting two different FTPs in an athlete. You can't do it at this stage, but that is going to be in an upcoming release, probably by the end of the year. You think about the complexity of what we're doing now, add multiple FTPs, and it's really difficult. If you ask the Facebook group how to manage it, there are a lot, Steve Palladino and the guy, there's a lot of people that have figured out a great way to do it. But until we can figure out how to manage all of that data and all of those calculations, we haven't been able to implement that as a solution, but it is coming. The thing is, right, in closing, understand that you have a full analytics engine. It's doing math. It's doing, all the things. If you were to create let's say you were working on your chart, you were to configure, let's say I turn that back into a report. I have a new data series and I did 2 plus 2. That gives me a return of 4. See it right there? Now, I know that seems so simplistic, but for the scientists, the physiologists, the people who are really digging deeper into analytics, you don't have another piece of software that you can type 2 plus 2 and come up with 4 like that. Sure, there's 1 or 2 things out there that use, some default languages, but you're doing it all custom because ours blends with the model. You have the ability to use a model, mathematics, statistics, and algebra to really create some pretty dynamic things. It takes time to build the expertise. It takes a little bit of patience to get there. Use the Facebook group. Sign up for the next 2 webinars, which will go over the physiology of the power duration curve and the individualization of training. It'll show you kind of the core of the science in this. Or watch the webinar list. There is a good webinar list. You can find it right from here. You can read the articles. You'll always see upcoming webinars. It's a great place to sign up for. The webinar list is extensive. You can see all the recorded versions here. So we have a full list. You could watch this webinar recorded and not having to listen to me all night. New metrics, individualizing your training. This series in here, like 6 through 11 is really, or 6 through 10 is the core of it. That's a group of great learning. Work through those over time and you'll get a great education with WKO4. I'm done. You guys have been amazing. I can't believe people stayed on, didn't flick me. Sorry. So, but that should give you some good basic starting overflow playing with it. I'll take any final questions you might have. I was trying to keep up. I think I got them all. So if you have questions, now is the time to ask them. If not, you can drop off and I'm going to end it up. Is it possible to use Google Drive to share WKO folders in 2 computers? We do not officially support it. But if you post that in the Facebook, people will answer it. The reason we don't support it is if Google deletes your data or something else happens, that's not our problem. That being said, if you ask in the Facebook group, I'm sure they'll explain how to do it. We just don't officially support it. The problem is when you officially support it, and I would use, my unofficial answer is Dropbox does a really good job. Google Drive is okay. Be careful of, what's the PC one? The PC storage, I can't remember. Be careful of theirs. And if you have any problems, you got to be careful of file optimization when you start moving things into the cloud. So make sure that you exempt the program from file optimization. Any additional questions? Cool. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night. Shoot questions if you want. Get in that Facebook group and ask the question there. There's a lot of helpful people. I've been kind of quiet because I've been traveling and coaching and other things, but I'm around for a little while, so I'll be glad to help. Hope everybody has a great night. Thanks.